Hello everyone, welcome to screencast number 3, putting it all together, how to create the assembly. Okay. So if you've done these in order, you should have all of your parts made, really the base and the acrylic top. So I'm going to start with this file because I already have, if you remember when we made these, we turned them into components. And what an assembly is taking individual components and assembling them into a more complex object. And this file already is a component by, if you look at this in the file tree here at the top where it says wood v2, those little stacked cubes are the icons for a component. I'm sorry, are the icons for an assembly. And the individual cube are the icons for components. So, the idea is when you put multiple components together, you have an assembly. So this already is assembly just because we made multiple components within it. So I'm going to put the whole thing together in here, and we'll add the acrylic top to it when we're ready. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these outer pieces and place it where it goes on top of this inner piece. And to do that, I'm going to start with the move tool. And when you select the move tool, just be careful at the top here. You can move different types of objects, sketches, faces, bodies, but make sure it's on components because we're moving the entire component. So I'll select that component and I'm just going to move it forward a little bit. I'm just going to kind of get it close to where I want it. Right? Not exactly. Okay. And the reason we're just getting close is that we're going to use the joint tool that we learned how to use and to assemble this so that the pieces actually stick together. Just having two pieces near each other doesn't mean they're connected. So you have to have joints. And to make a good joint, it's helpful to have the pieces close to begin with because it tries to guess what you want based on what you select. And the closer it is, the more accurate it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the joint tool. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm looking for key pieces of geometry that I know need to go together. Okay, so I know that this inside point here, this inside edge of the slot and this edge of the slot need to coincide, and if they do, these two pieces go together. So that's going to be my reference. I'm going to choose that piece right there and that line right there and the other piece, and it snaps together. Okay. But not only does it snap together, they're joined together. If I try to move it, it moves as one piece. Okay. If you just use the align tool, that's not the case. Align tool will make things look like they're together, but they're not actually jointed. And we have our little joint icon there. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the other piece here. I'm going to use the move tool and move it somewhat close. Oh, okay, I made a little mistake here from earlier. I have this piece is still a body. I did not turn it into a component yet. So I'm going to right click, make that a component. I'm going to give it a name. It's the second outer piece, so outer piece 2. Okay, now I'm going to move it. Just trying to get it somewhat lined up. Okay, and then I'm going to use my joint tool and do the same thing I did before. Try to find that piece of geometry between the two pieces that should coincide. Okay, and that's all joined together. Okay, finally the base. We'll do the same thing. We're going to have to rotate it, but I'll select it, move it kind of close. I'm going to grab the rotate handles and rotate it. 90. Okay, get my join tool. I'm going to do the same trick How about that piece and this corner, if those edges are lined up? Maybe this isn't as deep as I thought. So I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to use a different edge. Use the join tool. I'll select that corner and this edge up here. Okay. All right, so there's the base assembled. Again, it's assembled because it's one single piece now. It's actually held together by joints. Okay, so now we're going to add the acrylic top. If you don't have your File Explorer open, you can come up here to the top, or the data panel, this top left corner, open the data panel, search through your files, find the top. Mine's right here. I'm going to drag it in. Okay, and I'm going to get it a little more in position. Need to rotate it. Okay, so that's kind of close. All right, now this piece actually goes, it connects with this inner piece, and it's at this time it's kind of tough to figure out how we're going to put it in there because this is in the way, but we can hide this thing temporarily. So I'm going to come up here to my file tree and find that outer piece, and then I'm going to click the eyeball, right? And what that does is it turns it off, and now I can see the inside, and I'm going to go ahead and use my join tool just like we did before, and maybe find, see that if that edge is aligned with this edge, there we have it. Just like a puzzle piece. Okay, and then I'm gonna turn this outer piece back on, and there we have all of our pieces so far assembled. Okay, we're not quite done though. These are the pieces we've made so far, but there are more pieces, and we want to model the whole thing so we can do a photo render, and that means we need screws. The good news is you're not going to have to model the screws because they're a great example of what's called a standard part, meaning all manufacturers use millions of standard parts that already exist in the things that they create. And there's large corporations that specialize in just supplying these parts. And one of the biggest is so big, it's actually built into Fusion, and it's called McMaster Car. So we can come right up here to our ribbon menu and go to the Insert tab and choose Insert McMaster Car Component. And it's going to open up basically a little web browser. This is their online catalog. As you can see, they have millions of standard parts in all kinds of categories. But we're looking for screws in particular. We need metric screws for this project. But we're going to choose the style first. I bought these style that have a rounded head. And sometimes it's called a hex drive. Sometimes it's called an Allen head. And I'm going to scroll down here until I find some, here we go, metric ones. I bought black ones, but I'm going to maybe choose the zinc ones. And M3, they're 3 millimeters. So the M3 part is the diameter. Okay, so we want a 3 millimeter diameter screw. There is something called the thread pitch, which is how many of these spiral threads are on there, and we only have one choice here, 0.5. And we want ones that are 14 millimeters long. So that's what this number is. So we're going to choose 14. Okay. Now after we choose that, we get this little menu here, and if you see at the bottom, we can actually download the CAD model. There's a variety of formats. So STEP, which we haven't used a lot of, but STEP is sort of a universal CAD model, which a lot of different programs could open. So we're going to choose that one. And then you have a choice between regular and no threads. Okay, I'm going to choose no threads. And that's a really common thing to do because the spiral shape of those threads it's kind of a difficult piece of geometry for the program to handle. And if you have a whole bunch of screws in your model with all those threads, it's really taxing on the computer. So it's very commonly they're not modeled. So I'll press download. Okay, here's our instance of the screw. I'm gonna kind of get it close to where I want it first before I use the join tool to add it. I'm gonna rotate it. Okay, oops. And press OK. Okay, well, it doesn't really matter what kind of screw I chose. We're going to have to add the materials separately here. Okay, I'm going to go, okay, joint, and we're going to find a key piece of geometry on the screw. Let's choose that circle right there. For two reasons. One, has a center point, and then two, there's a good chance that edge, it'll put it flush with this edge. Now this actually is not a round hole, so we're not going to be able to find the center. So we're going to have to adjust that. I'm going to choose maybe this point right here as a target. Okay, so that gets us pretty close, and we can still offset it, which we need to do. So I'm going to grab this arrow, just offset it up a bit. Okay, so we got a little wiggle room here because the hole's bigger than the screw. Okay, so this will be good. This is good enough. And in real life, the hole is a little bit bigger than the screw, so it'll fit easily. So press OK. I'm going to pause here now and go ahead and add this material, because to add the other screws, I'm really just going to make copies of these and just slightly move them into place. It's a lot easier than adding to going through this whole process again. So I'll show you what I mean here in a moment, but let's go ahead. We'll find this screw right here. I'm going to right click, go to Appearance, and I'm going to go ahead and find some metal, maybe stainless steel. Drag that on there. Okay. Now, why does this matter? Well, this is what it's going to render. So if we're going to make it look real, we have to have the right materials. Okay, so again, to add the rest of the screws, what we'll do is we will select the screw. Okay, the component, I can select it over here. I can click on the screw. And then I'm going to use the move command here. But notice it says move/copy. We can make copies of this component. So we're going to come down here to this box that says create copy. And then this other hole is just directly across from the one that we have right here. So I'm just going to grab this arrow to translate it to the left. Okay, the height should be okay. Let's kind of snap into point in between negative 1.1 and 1.2, so I'm going to call it 1.15. There we go. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for the bottom two, except we're going to move them down. So I'll select this component, move, make sure you check copy, and we're going to move a copy straight down. That's good. And then I'll do the same thing over here. I'll select this screw, move, create a copy, and I'm going to move it straight down. Okay, now we could go ahead and add the nuts in the back, but since we're only going to see one side of it at a time, when we render it, we'll just go ahead and we'll call this complete. All right, so there you have it, the completed assembly with all the parts, including the screws. I'll see you in the next one.